Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Critique 6.1. This is part 3 of the video. And let's get started here with Martine's illustration. Zoom in right here. We have a character and the character in the background. Now, like I said, for this assignment, you guys can use a simple background if you like, as long as it enhances or kind of goes along with your character. For this one right here, I think the colors of the background is great. I like the transition from the dark blue to the green. I think it really complements your character. It definitely just sits within the same color range, which is fine. As long as your character still stands out, I think it's all good. I like the texture on here, which is like the bubbles coming out from underneath here to create that really nice texture in the back. Now, if you watch a couple of the other critiques that I did for this assignment, please do watch them if you'd like as well, because I think that a lot of the things I discussed there is very helpful for everybody to kind of pick up on. Um, Textures will take over. Like if you place an in this case the character without much of a texture to him in a very textured background, then it could seem very overwhelming. Like it really does take over and just basically takes the attention away from the viewer. Now I discussed this in a couple of other critiques. Although beautiful with all the textured like clouds or textured backgrounds, one way to combat this is to basically add texture to your character so that it'll be textured all throughout. Like there's consistency all throughout, or lessen some of the textures in the background so that it wouldn't be so overwhelming. Um, in your case, Martin, I think that adding textures to your character is basically the way to go. Or you can meet in the middle, which is probably going to be better. I know that you're not finished with your character yet, so that's okay. But let's go over a couple of things that hopefully you can utilize for your as you work on your character. All right, before I address the character itself and see what we can do with him, let's talk about the background itself and how it relates to the character. Like I said, simple is fine. However, the thing that really kind of just stands out here is the fact that you have a very flat background. So the background is flat, but your character is standing. Now, if your character was, let's say, swimming, like actually floating in the water, then that's great. You know, it makes sense. He's floating in the water. But here you can see that the feet is actually just planted firmly onto some kind of a plane. But like I said, the background is flat. So we need to find a way to create some kind of a platform here, even as simple as maybe like a magical platform or actually draw a rock in there for him to be standing on. Then it would make a lot more sense with him standing on that platform. And another thing, and the thing about creating a platform is that it creates a lot of depth as well. So, you're actually placing him somewhere instead of just floating kind of aimlessly, even though he has to get a pose where he's definitely standing on something. And the other thing that you could do here, especially with a platform, you could dress it up, add a couple of corals, some weeds to fill in that background just a little bit more. Like I said, it doesn't have to be really intricate. It could be pretty simple with just kelp or like a seaweed just flying about or floating about. Another thing that I would highly suggest is to, like I said, meet in the middle. So take some of that soft brush and just paint some areas out so that it wouldn't be too much and it wouldn't overtake some of the textures that you're going to place in the character. And even if you do place textures in character, you still wouldn't want it to be, you wouldn't want the textures to be placed and be more focused heavy on the background than the character itself. So I'm just taking a soft brush, holding down an Option or Alt, and just lightly fading some of those textures away, like so. As far as the platform go, like I said, it could be a rock, it could be some kind of maybe like an ancient ruin that he's standing on. Just draw some kind of a block in there and add some textures to it to make it look really, really cool. One way to do that is to just take like the lasso tool And I'm gonna do it since I don't have your character on a separate layer. I'm just gonna draw it right here. Just gonna create the shape. So let's say that's the platform with the lasso tool, like the assignment that we did this week. And then this is going to be the platform itself. So I'm gonna fill in that shape. Command D to deselect, and then let me choose the lasso tool again. And then I'm going to create that plane on top. Since it's a lot lighter on top, because that's where your light source is going to be, I'm going to choose a much lighter value. So pretty simple, right? I could then merge these two together. I can look online for some kind of a texture. Let's say a rock texture. And make it a little bit bigger so that it covers the whole thing. And then I can mess around with it using adjustment levels. You want a nice high contrast so that once you clip it using Option Command G or Alt Control G and set it to something like multiply or even lighten, the texture will show up a lot more. And lower the opacity, and I have a textured rock. But remember, do not rely too much on photograph. You still have to go back in there and paint some areas out to make sure that you're not relying too heavily on that photograph. And from there, I can use the lasso tool once again. I can make some grooves onto the rock, create more planes to it. Pretty simple. All you have to do is just apply some textures and then apply and create some kind of a base for them to attach to. I can also just simply use textured brushes like this and just draw some textures in there as well. Excuse me. Like that. Very simple. And then when you place your character on top of that, it'll look like he is going to be sitting on something. Let me see if I could separate this character right here. Hopefully you have this on a separate layer. I think that would work a lot better. I think he's separated. Okay, cool. All right, perfect. Let me just take him, make him a little bit smaller. Like I said, hopefully you have this on a separate layer so you wouldn't have to do what I just did. And then I could take this, put it behind, and place your character on top. See how that just makes a lot more sense than him floating in the space of the water or the volume of the water. At least now I can apply some shadows in here using multiply. I could take my brush tool, apply some shadows underneath his foot or even just directly underneath him. Since it looks like his lighting is probably like in the front here, so it's gonna go back like that. Pretty simple shadow. Lower the opacity and you got yourself a nice looking shadow. See how the platform now just really solidifies his stance. All right, so let's go to the character right here. And just like what we did with the rock, you pretty much treat it the same way. You can go in there, you can apply some textures using some images and then setting the blend modes, or you could stick with a textured brush. The great thing about the textured brush is that you can hide things with texture, because if you're gonna have a sharp edge or a sharp line, um, the scrutiny is gonna be a little bit stronger. Like you're gonna see the straight line. If something's off, you're gonna notice it. For example, let's say the helmet right here. But if you're gonna use something like a textured brush, you can sort of just go go with like the unevenness of it sometimes. Let me use a different texture brush. Maybe this one right here. I have a couple that I tend to use, but maybe this one will work better. There you go. This one's a lot, has more flow to it. Now again, if you guys need some more custom brushes, all you have to do is click on the brush setting here, click on this little flyaway menu, and click on Get More Brushes, and it should send you to the Adobe website where you could download the brushes. As far as your character goes, I noticed that maybe for the last almost 2.5 weeks, not much progress really has been going on with your character. And I don't know what it is, but maybe hesitation as to where to take your character, or maybe you need some ideas on how to go about doing it. My suggestion, and is basically to just go for it. You're working with digital. You can work with several layers, and if you don't like something, you can simply just throw it away. For example, if we get a brand new layer like this, I'm just going to choose like a normal hard brush, like maybe the round brush. Turn on your pen pressure opacity and just start drawing. You already have a guide that you've drawn in, so all you have to do is just go in there, treat it like a painting, like a normal painting. And you already have the colors set up, and all you have to do is just pick the colors using the option, use some references if you need to help you, and just literally just paint that in. Kind of like that, hesitation, because I just don't know where to start, kind of sets in a lot of times. So I like to go in there and just really, really start laying down brush strokes and just wait for it to sort of just take me in a certain direction. Because the thing about me is that line art, it can be a little bit intimidating. So I tend to like to work in shapes, like the shape of the eyes here. And I start blocking in like the shadows, those become shapes, and so on. And the arm here, just draw it in. Use a larger brush if you need to, if you want to cover a lot of area. And don't be scared to add in more layers of highlights or colors. So in what, 4 minutes or so, this is pretty much what I achieved. This is before, this is after. I just laid the brushes down there. Because if you hesitate, you're gonna basically stop yourself from just painting. Just get in there. Like I said, it's digital. You're not gonna mess anything up if you start with a brand new layer. And from here, I can draw some of those lines back in there. Plus, if you do something like this, you're gonna allow yourself to just really practice the brushes and the digital tools. Again, use references because it'll help you with anatomy, it'll help you with structure, and and pretty much everything else you need. There you go. Go to the chest here. I'll take a large brush, pick up the value or color, and just with the opacity turned on and pen pressure turned off, so I could because this brush right here already has pen pressure. But if it doesn't, you could turn the pen pressure on. I'm just going to paint. Not think about the structure too much. Just want to make sure that everything looks like it has dimension to it. I can always color correct using the blend mode or simply redraw some areas. And see how the brush creates texture and creates planes. I'll use that to my advantage. Okay, I made a mistake. It's okay. I'll pick up a color and just paint it in. So this is pretty much how I want you to go about it, Martin. Just shake it off and just go in there and just start painting. The same thing I did with the rock right here. It's pretty much what I did. Just go in there, create a shape, put textures on top, and start painting on top of it to create some kind of a platform. All right, so just to run it down again, for the background, less is more in terms of texture. So paint some of it out and leave some of it in. It's important since you're sticking with a pose where he is standing on the platform, then create that platform. And lastly, just get in there in terms of just painting your character. Don't hesitate. Use layers. If you don't like it, throw it away and start over again. That's okay too. All right, that's pretty much it. Can't wait to see your final illustration. And if you need any more help, let me know. I'd be more than happy to help you out. Thanks, Martin. And the background, I think it's pretty much the same, but let me upload that as well so that everybody could take a look at your progress for both the character as well as the background. Your character. And then here's your background. First off, stunning colors. I really like your more muted palette. The sepia tone is really beautiful, and I also like the way that you handled the style. It has a really nice oil painterly look to it, which I think really goes with your character and I guess the type of character that he is. You know, old kind of Western kind of feel to it. Um, you get like a really cool looking pointed shovel, and then you have the weight, the balance held by his other hand. I talked about this in other critiques. Sometimes if you have too much texture in the background, kind of like yours, it can overpower the character. However, and this is a big however or big but, you can do it as long as the character is textured as well. In this case, the simplicity of the background works, and the simplicity helps kind of dumb down or dull down the textures because you're only working with shapes here instead of like if you're gonna have like a lot of details in there and then you're gonna have the same texture, it might be too much, it might be too overwhelming. So I think this is a really beautiful job right here. Let's zoom in your character. Again, just look at the beautiful brush strokes to create that painterly effect to it. So essentially, it's just, oh, I just noticed the canvas texture. That's really beautiful too. The canvas texture of the background here that's overlaid on top of that background creates like a canvas type feel, just pushing the painterly aspect of it. So beautiful work. Now, since it's digital, you could definitely use some of the blending modes to apply, um, you know, some more special effects or colors to it. But I feel like since you're going for a certain style that's more painterly, maybe don't do too much of it. You could utilize it to add some kind of a light because it is digital. You can add some digital aspects to it by using something like a soft brush like this. And then adding a little bit of a warm light, set to overlay. And just add hints of light here. Again, this is a digital painting, so take advantage of some of the features that are found in digital painting. So I just want you to push the light just a little bit. Yeah, kind of subtle. I'm not being too flashy with it. It's a nice little subtle difference. See how it's like I just turned on the light, creating like a really beautiful ray of sunshine just coming down and, you know, adding a bit of shine to your character here. Let's zoom in a little bit. Just look at that. Look how beautiful those brush strokes are. And also here. That's the one thing though, even though it's really painterly all over the place, I would love to see a bit more structure to the scale. Just because I feel like it doesn't have as much dimension as everything else. So maybe add some more levels of shadows in there. Just a little bit of shadow or a darker value to sort of help balance it out just a little bit more and add more structure to it. So not, it's not too thin, like it doesn't feel like an afterthought. Instead, it still has a little bit depth to it and a little bit of structure. Something like that, just so that it has more of a form to that. Otherwise, like I said, Mingo, I just really love the way that you approach this. There's something really classic about it, something quite beautiful in the way that you approach the whole illustration. Um, there's beauty and simplicity, and I think that the background is there to serve its purpose uh, as a companion piece to your character, and your character, you know, is where our focus should be. Like, look, just to the rest of the class, just see how like those different brush strokes here create almost like a ripple, so that the surface of the ground is not just flat. And you can see that in the shadow as well. It looks like it's kind of just forming into the ripples of the brush strokes or, the uneven surface. So I think that you did a really fantastic job there. Yeah, that's pretty much my critique. Add a little bit of light in there, some kind of a golden light, or if you want, push the blue just a little bit so that you have a little bit of more balance as well. A blue or that seafoam color, just let those colors kind of shine through just a little bit, almost like a peak of color coming from one side. So it's not too overwhelmingly uh, warm yellows and browns all the time. But don't overdo it because, like I said, you don't want to take away from your style. All right, that's pretty much it. I don't have a lot else to add because I think that it's pretty much nearly complete in my opinion. And just a couple of things here and there to just add some details, um, really play up like the grunginess of it. Maybe add some grunge texture to create like a dust down here to create an extra bit of movement. Let me see if I have a grunge texture. I probably don't, but oh, here, dust particle. It's too big, but I really want a larger particle here. whatever texture you could add in where it still doesn't feel like it's too much, I say go for it. Something like that. You can even find textures online to apply. All right, that's pretty much it. I can't wait to see what you end up doing for your card design, but I know it's gonna look really good. You know, it could maybe like a wood texture or planks of wood, kind of like almost like building coffins, and you could like um, align the whole border with it. You know, but I'll leave it up to you. I know you're gonna come up with something really cool. All right, thank you so much, Mingo. I can't wait to see your final. Up next, we have Philip's illustration. Now, Philip, I'm really liking what's happening with your character here. His form is a little bit more filled out than last time. Um, and I really, really love his expressions. Like he looks really fierce. I think the technique that I suggested last time using the mirror tool, I think is going to be really helpful if you want to create a really nice symmetrical look to your character right here. And I think what would benefit your character would be the same thing that I suggested to Martine's illustration, in that you have all the colors here. You have everything pretty much down. But what you want to do now is to just get in there and really just start painting. Take like a large brush with a opacity. Let's see here. So take like a large brush of a hard brush like this, either any shape, but as long as it's a hard brush. Turn on your opacity toggle here. You could turn on your pen pressure size if you want, or you could turn it off, but I could turn it off and on, especially if you choose this particular brush. And just get in there and just start painting. Because right now, with the background that you have chosen, the background's really rendered, but then your character has more of a cartoon style to it. So what we want to do is to marry the two styles and meet in the middle so that they don't clash with each other. So what I want to do is, after you're picking your brush, create a brand new layer like this and just begin painting. Like, don't think too much about it. Just lay your brush in there and just start laying down your values. Oh, I did see it. You actually did you use the mirror tool? I see that now. That looks really good. And if the colors are not working yet, that's okay. As long as you've got the rendering down, we could use the blend modes to correct it. So I see that you use like a texture brush. I would recommend not using a texture brush right now until you are really sure that your form is good. Because if you find that your form is not working and you're almost done, then you're gonna have to change a lot of things, and it's gonna be harder to kind of go back in time if you already accomplished a lot of things. So holding down on the Option key with one finger, and then I can pick up the colors or values and just paint. Remember, break your shapes down into the basic shapes. You have the sphere, the cylinder, the cube, and the cone. And since your lighting is coming from the front, from the sides, then you're gonna have light coming in like this, or here, one side, or the side of the cone, and then your shadow looks like it's in the middle, like this. It's always good to do something like this if you're still unsure of how to render something, like the form itself. so that you have a reference to keep in mind. Like if I break down my whole shape here, the head's basically a sphere, the nose area is basically a sphere, and then the brow ridge is like a half a sphere that's plopped on top. Same thing with the cheeks. The body is basically just a cylinder or a cone. You could treat it as a cone, and then you have other basic shapes here. Cylinder, and so on. So break it down. It will really, really help you. It will take the guesswork away. So if I treat that head as a sphere, I'm looking at how I did the sphere over here with the light coming from the sides. Then I can add the light to the sides like this, and basically what you did right now, but it really helps us break everything down a lot stronger. Head, the nose, that brow ridge, so on. See that? Same thing with the cylinder. See how it broke it down? You can see the light here. And I really highly suggest not use the soft brush, because the soft brush is just going to give you really soft brush strokes, which in turn will not allow you to have a really nice, strong shape. Because the soft brush is just going to soften that really hard edge. So like sort of like what you see here. Use the hard brush like this at a high opacity, and that will allow you to break it down a lot more. And make sure you have a nice hard edge like this. I'll show it here. Like that. I don't know if I mentioned it before, but it's always good to start out in black and white. I think that's what we started with the demo I had for you last week. Oh, it's good to start in a black and white stage because you could see those values a lot more. So if I have that black and white stage, I don't have to think about color and how color affects anything quite yet, and I can just think about the values, and that's all I'm thinking about. Think about that shape. See, I'm not thinking about which red goes where, how red should it be, where does the yellow go? Just looking at the values here. I'm doing a quick pass. And the great thing about the symmetry tool, remember it's this butterfly, it's set vertical, and you can move this around to find the middle. It's the fact that since it's a very symmetrical illustration, you can just work on one side and I'll just copy it. So do most of everything in a black and white stage like that. Again, the shoulder is just a sphere, so I'm going to treat it like a sphere. And the light's going to come from this side. Like that. And the shadow will come in like this. Work with a larger brush like this, or even larger than that. It will cover a whole lot more ground. And it will force you to look at those shapes instead of obsess over the lines. You could just paint those like that, and I could take the light and paint in the light. See how that looks a lot more rendered now? And then I can start adding in the shadows for the arms, triceps. Look, it's looking really jacked now, right? And again, it's just a couple of brush strokes using the hard brush and the pen pressure opacity. And with the hair, we talked about it. It's good to have like a more flow to it. And like I mentioned, I believe it was in uh I'm not sure which critique was it prior. I believe it was Martinez as well. Using a textured like brush will hide a lot of things a lot better than it would a really solid brush. Because I turn this off, see how everything just looks like you're kind of just focused in on them. But if I use a texture, our senses are kind of just like looking at everything as a whole. Now I only did this on the character, but it did it with the background as well. Now I can erase some areas of it. So if I just take this out to bring back the background, hopefully you have it on another layer because that will be a lot easier to you know to add to render out separately. But treat that character as a black and white first. Then, since you already chosen a background like this, you can take some of the colors that you have, like this, use the blend modes. Remember, I like to use multiply. And on top of that, let me pick some red. I'll set it to overlay. And lower the opacity of it. Actually, let me turn off symmetry right now so I can have a little bit more freedom with it. And then on top of that, I'll use orange. So take note of the sequence here. After you do your value, now I'm going to choose a golden color and I'm going to start punching up the light. Because I already have the red in there. Now I want that orange to come through. And then I can keep building. I'll set overlay once again. I'll go for even brighter gold or orange or yellow. We'll puncture. I'm going to start adding that light that we set up in that sphere right here, or the basic shapes. And since we have that value underneath, you don't have to worry about rendering color. You already kind of did most of the work here. You still have to paint a little bit here and there, sure. But now we took away all the guesswork of trying to paint with color for now until you really get used to it. And then finally, to give it a really beautiful glow, set it to color dodge. And I'll stick with that orange color, or maybe a little bit darker than that. And here's where I'm going to add in that golden glow. If you don't want to do this right now, like do the rendering and then not sure what to do with the blending modes, try it out first. Pick up another image from the assignment 5.1 when you guys use the blend modes on a black and white photograph. Practice on that one and practice the blend mode. See which one best, you know, will best service your illustration. Uh, Just see how she just really just pops off the screen now. So I think that's my suggestion. You can either watch what we did with Martine's illustration, and go about doing color that way because I did a little demonstration on how to paint with just color, or go this way, make it a little bit easier yourself and revert back to a black and white image and render him out using large brushes, large hard brushes with the pen pressure on for both, or just pen pressure off for the width, and then just render him out and then add the blending modes. I use the blending modes to add color, which is, let me just go through it again. Multiply for the base coat. If I turn this off, it's going to look like that. So it's important to have a little multiply in there, sort of like a light wash. And on top of that is overlay. This is just the main color pass, which is red. And this one, I start building up the glow on the sides. Overlay, another overlay. So keep pushing the glow. And finally, the highlight using color dodge. All right. That's pretty much it. Phil, hopefully I gave you a couple ideas on how to go about completing your character study. I mean, your character illustration. Again, you don't have to. You do not have to do exactly what I did here. You could go to a couple of the other your fellow classmates' critiques and maybe follow the advice that I have for them. Maybe you like those better. Work with color right away instead of just using black and white, and then adding in blending modes, and that's okay. Um, there's not all artists work the same way. But yeah, just make it easier on yourself. Really take advantage of the tools in Photoshop, like the symmetry tool, the layers, the blending modes, and just really play around with it. Don't stress too much about like you know how to approach it, but rather just really experiment and find out what works best for you. Because if you find that you like the black and white better, it works for you. You try it out, you like it, or maybe you don't. Then for our next project, then you could apply what you learned from this one to the next project. Because the next project is the big one, you know? It's the one where you're going to spend like half of the semester completing. So, yeah, I think that you've chosen a really good background. We're just going to get going on that character and, and really bring it to life. We have a couple of more days. Like I said, I'm probably going to be pushing the due date a little bit. No, well, not the due date, but I'm going to give you an extension afterwards. And hopefully the extension for everybody will just help you guys create like a really beautiful portfolio piece. All right, so that's pretty much it, Philip. Thank you very much. Can't wait to see what you do with it towards the end, the goal here for project two. And again, if you need more help, please, please, please do not hesitate to let me know. Tag me in the class, and I'll try to get to you as soon as I can. Hi guys, I'm so sorry about that. I had to cut off the video. This was supposed to be part three, but unfortunately, my computer just started to go a little bit haywire. So, this is part 3.5 of the critiques for assignment 6.1, which is going to be your work in progress for your characters as well as your background. All right, just to pick up where we left off, let's talk about Romans. Okay, so we have Roman's really cool looking illustration here. Roman, very good job on that rendering. Beautiful rendering on it. I think you did a fine job. Definitely have a certain aesthetic going on here. I'm not quite sure what it reminds me of because I know I've seen illustrations like this where it's almost kind of ceremonial. There's a bit of a gothic kind of element to it. Um, I think that what you did here is quite beautiful. Oh, it looks almost like it's vector, like it's done using Illustrator or a vector a vector program. Let's see your background here. It says here that you have a rough draft in the background, but I'm picking it up and see. All right, awesome. Ooh, I love the colors on it. I really like the colors that you're choosing here, and it looks like you are trying out the lasso tool to create the background, which is great. Really, really play around with it. Really play around with the background and see what you could come up with. I like the mountains in the back, and I also like the cactus in the front. The lightning, I think, could be punched up just a little bit. Please watch the critique I have for, I believe it was Felix's illustration, the one with the genie type character with the lightning bolts. Take a look at the demo I did on lightning there, because I think that if lightning is going to be the main light source, make sure that you make sure that you um, you know make that the brightest part of the illustration because it is a light source. That's where the light is going to be coming from. um, One thing, looking at your illustration though, I gotta say, I think that your illustration would be better served if it was horizontal rather than vertical, because you have a really nice pose here with your with the horse. Because initially I think you had just a character, right? But here you added in the horse as well. So if you fit this in a vertical card, then he and the horse will only take up like a small portion of that card. I'd rather you just flip that card horizontally like this, and then, add the border, a little card border, the nameplate, the little icon here for the element, and then put your character in the middle. I'd rather you do that, design some kind of card, or use one of the templates that I have and just flip it to its side so that you can have the character here. I think that would better serve your character overall because he looks really, really good the way he is, but um, but yeah, I think a horizontal card would work better for him. As far as the background go, I feel like there's almost like a disconnect. I don't know how far you are with your background already, but I feel like there's somewhat of a disconnect to um, your character style and the background. I almost feel like maybe you could go for a limited palette, somewhere along that steel gray line. I mean, still add colors. I'd love you to still use colors, but um, really play up the gothic feel instead. For example, if we look at your character and treat it like that card, do something simpler. If you're gonna go for like lightning, just do it with a plane like this. Let's set this to multiply, or maybe multiply. There you go. And let's say this is your background. This is your card. Have a plane, and then put the mountains all the way in the distance like this. Like put it lower, and then have the cactus like that. Like very almost stylized. Do it in the same style that you have your character. Like a really nice gothic looking feel to it. And maybe even think of it like a stage play, like like the Tim Burton movies, like Frankenweenie, or even movies such as like James and the Giant Peach, Nightmare Before Christmas, like those kind of like almost puppet looking kind of aesthetic, and also the gothic kind of backgrounds to them. Think of that. Think of a stage show, and just think about the basic shapes of the cactus, the mountain in the back, and then you have the lightning here, like maybe like one lightning coming down like that. Like really simple three-part background. You have this part, the foreground background, middle ground, and then the lightning all the way in the back. And then it looks almost like a stage because the way you're lighting it, the light's coming from underneath, lighting your character. And then you could just have the lightning be sort of like a special effect in the background. Let me see if I could find like what kind of had in mind here. Here you go. It's a bit of a Tim Burton-esque background, but it's just a simple shapes. And I think I did somewhat similar to one of the other critiques. I'm gonna have to refer back to it. But see how simple those silhouettes are, and then the light kind of just comes in here and just creates those, adds more to the silhouette of the shape of those trees. Let's see where else. And as far as color palettes go, I do like that steel blue color that you have here. I just typed in Gothic Desert and this is what it came up with right here. Where you could simply take this as references for the mountains in the back, and then the sky could be like this steel, like a dreary kind of day. And then the color, like basically this is the color palette right here. You get like a really muted mossy color, and then the atmospheric perspective will create all these structures in the background. Again, all I did was type in Google Gothic Desert, and this is like one of the first images that popped out. Again, very simple shapes. Oh, here's a good one. Oh, here you go. It's almost like the sketches that you have. Like that. Give it a really muted, kind of moody feel to it. Simple shapes with the cactus, and then you have like a really nice moody background, and then you have like the lightning coming in. Or you can even go a little bit crazier with a little bit more about red. Simple to achieve on in blending modes. Basically, just take red, set it to multiply, and then another red set it to overlay, and you could get like a really nice color palette like this. And then the back is that greenish tone. That's pretty much what the color of your background remind me of. Because I know this is not gray; it's a bit of a greenish gray to it, like that. So research a little bit more. I'd rather you get, like I said, I don't know if you watched the other critiques, but I will be adding a little bit of an extension to your final projects for project two. So do what you can until the due date, and then you can spend a little bit extra time, maybe during spring break, to continue on and apply it and try to make it like the best portfolio piece that you can. So just look up Gothic Desert on Google Images and look up really moody images like this to use as your reference. Because and keep it simple. I really, really like your style. Keep it the same. Keep your backgrounds quite similar so that you can so that the style will be consistent all the way through. And the red one. All right, let's go for that greenish color. So we have the mossy green, and then you have the muted mountains in the back. And then the sky, if I remember correctly here, has a bit of a greenish tint. And then you have the cactus in the front. I say keep with the same theme, like a dark green color. Like that. Like keep it very simple. Don't try to, overly render it. Do basically treat it the same way that you treated this. And I think that it'll come out really, really beautiful. That's just what I think. My suggestion is to one, make it a little bit easier on yourself, and to really, really elevate your illustration. Because I think that I feel if you're like me, you're gonna work yourself trying to make those colors work with the style of your character. So treat your background the same way that you treated your character. Use some of the tools that you learned, like the lasso tool, but still keep it within the same realm. And I think you'll do really good. And I think that horizontal composition will do you a lot of good as well. All right, so those are basically my recommendations. Keep that style going. It's really good. And if you run into trouble, let me know. I'd be more than happy to help you out even more. All right, thank you so much, Roman. It looks great. Can't wait to see what you do with it. Oh, unfortunately, I ran into a little bit of trouble again. It seems like my computer is just having a hard time keeping up with recording for the critiques. But hopefully, I could get the last two done without any problem. But I'll try to splice it together as best as I can. All right, so the next one that we have here is Rosie's. No, actually, Rosie, I already did a critique on your illustration. I think that you did a really, really good job with it. But let's take a quick look at your character. But um, we talked about your background already. But your character, I think we went through it too. Looks fantastic. Great job keeping your character pretty much a mid-tone color because once you start applying colors on top of it, I think you will find it a lot easier. So let's say you have the pink. I'll set it to multiply. And again, we talked about your background during the demonstration, but I think that we could go over the character like this and see what we can do to color it. So multiply, and then on top of that, overlay. It's good that you have a reference photo here. Really, really good job with the fur. And we can add in some blue that you have. So let me use a soft brush. Like that. A little bit yellow just based on a reference here. Some blues. And I could play around with different blending modes too. Let's say soft light. Soft light's really good to get into that mid-tone area. Like that. See how it colors like it helps take out the grayish tones. And then lastly, once you're done adding in your lighting, you can then use a normal layer to bring in the colors that you couldn't really add in. Making it every time I put my pen down, make a sound. So sometimes there's no substitute to just getting in there and just adding the highlights yourself. And that's good too, because now you can actually have those individual fur come out as individual brushstrokes. Because that's kind of like the pitfall of the blending mode sometimes, is that it's going to color everything the same way. So it's good to go in there and just add some paints, some normal brushstrokes as well. So yeah, that's pretty much it, Rosie. I think that you did a really fantastic job. Your character looks so good. Um, you set yourself up really well by doing a mid-tone, like a flat value. They could easily apply colors onto. And don't forget, paint on top of it. Continue to paint on top of it, add more colors so that it feels more natural instead of just having it feel like you just colored everything with just the blending modes. All right, Rosie, great job. I can't wait to see how your character would look like in front of the background that you created, which was also quite beautiful as well. I'm sorry, guys. I'm just having a lot of technical difficulties with my hardware right now. All right, just to go do a rundown of what I just did. Um, I think Stephanie, you have a really good background. I love the colors a bit. I think it works really well. It's simple yet effective. I think it accentuates your character, and your character is actually coming along as well. I like the colors on her, but my concern would be the two things seem to clash. You know, I just place your character in front of the um, the the background here, and it seems like your character is in a different light. She's lit differently. She seems to be in like a bright bright setting. It seems like it's also maybe the daytime versus your background, which looks like it's a nighttime. So I'm kind of a little bit concerned about, the two things clashing. That's why I placed your character on top, just to see how it would look. I mean, I think she fits in fine, but you have to kind of figure out a way to meet in the middle. Either set the background to a lighter background, like in the daytime, to match her lighting, or set her in the darker lighting scheme. So let's say we want to add the darker lighting on her. Then take that background color and create a clipping mask on top and set it to multiply, just to add a darker element there. And then on top of that, add the color, add the lighting color on top of it. And just based on your background as well, it's going to be like an orangey color, like that. Which I think drowns out your character just a little bit because, like I said, your character has this really bright and airy feel to her, but then the lighting in the background will really dominate and make you lose a lot of the details in your character. So that's something that you really have to watch out for. Um, so I would suggest just matching your character's lighting, because I think your character seems to be like this really bubbly, bright personality, and just based on your reference, we could take some of that and just change it um, to what you have here. It seems like you're doing like a fire element, right? We could still keep it daytime and still have it be fire, or at least brighten up that background so that um, she still embodies the fire element, but it's still keeping up with her character. So maybe she's, burdened with the fire powers, but her personality is totally opposite. She's like a bubbly, bright personality. So let's just do something to the background here to lighten it up. See what we can do. Image adjustment levels. So I'm just going to brighten it up. See how much it's lacking brightness. So let me just push this up. And instead of red, let's turn that into like a purple color. And then we could add the fire elements afterwards. So in a brand new layer, I'm just going to select soft light. See how this works? No, that's not going to work. Color. There you go. Just brushing in a purple color on top, and then I'm going to lower the opacity like that. Like I said, even though the fire is a fiery red color, we can still play around with different colors that will help balance everything out. Let's go create another layer, set this one to overlay. And instead of red, let's go for a pinkish red for fire. And then we'll place it down here. So it transitions up to a purple, but then maybe the sky back here is like a red color. Because before it was just overwhelmingly red. So now we're using the blending modes to create a bit of a transition in the background. So before it was just really red. Now there's hints of cooler colors in there. So when we place her on top again, she kind of just blends in with it just a little bit more. And before we start adding lighting to her, let's take a look at your character and figure out what we need to do to prepare for adding in those colors. Number one is going to be the shadows. I think I talked about it in the last critique, how she needs a bit more shadow to her, because right now she appears quite flat. Go back to the critique from the last module, because I think I go in depth into that. But see how this lighting just cuts her down the middle? Let that lighting come in and, cut through, let it cut through. Let me just put it down here. Let it cut through to the different planes of the face. I forgot if I suggested to go back to a black and white image, but I highly suggest turning this back into a black and white image. Because if you're going to go for like a nice reddish color to dominate anyway, it's better to have contrast than it is to start out with color. So turn this into a black and white image. So image adjustment black and white. And then let's go to image adjustment levels. Let's give her a lot of contrast. Already you can see the beautiful contrast happening here. She feels a little bit more balanced than before. Before it feels like, she was a little bit flat because the color is either bright or shadow. At least now there's more nuances in between. And with it being black and white, I don't have to think about color when I'm rendering. And when I'm rendering, I want to use a hard brush with the pen pressure opacity on and the pen pressure width on as well. And from here, I don't have to worry about color. And I can just start painting. Let me use this one instead, actually. And I'm using a large brush, so I could just be really general about what I'm doing here, rendering. And it's good to add a little bit of darker shadow in there too. It's also going to create a lot of depth because the overlaps is going to create those depth. Because if you're not going to have those hard shadows, it's going to be, the contrast is not going to be that strong. So sometimes, like if there's shadow here, put a little line for shadow. And then here in the underarm, I'm going to add a little shadow too. And here. So those shadows, those will help explain overlap and explain the form in a really strong way. So like this. See how it almost just disappears in there? So I need some of that shadow in. Now, I'm not doing line art. I'm not placing a line art all around her. Instead, I'm just going around where the shadows should be, and I'm going to place hints of that dark line underneath. Like this. See how her form is just a little bit stronger now. Nose. See, if we do the nose, then you want to think of it as a separate shape. That nose is going to have its own shape. It's just basically a triangle like this. So if I add lighting to it, so let's see if we can break this down. If I start adding in light to that form, you then add the light here, here where the cheekbone is, and then on this side of the nose, because that nose is a shape. It's a three-dimensional shape. See how much planes there are now, and it's going to explain that shape a little bit more. I'm just going to do a portion here because I want you to kind of get in there as well and just really lay your brush strokes in. You could see just how little planes there are. And because of because there's not a lot of planes, if you start adding in light and color, everything, your details will just be washed out because it's a very flat value and it doesn't have a lot of planes for the light to adhere to. So once you break it down into those basic shapes, like the nose is a triangle, so the nose is a triangle, you have the sphere, you have the cube, and then you have the cylinder. So look for those shapes in your greater form. For example, like I said, the nose is just a triangle, a sphere for the mouth area here. You get a sphere for the shoulder, cylinder for the arm, cylinder for the the lower arm here, and so on. You're going to find all those basic shapes come together to create the full form. So that's how you kind of want to treat it. And because if you treat it that way, you will then find where the light is going to be placed. Like here, the nose is going to hit a lot of light because it's sticking out. And then on the other side of that, like the cone is going to be shadow. So it's going to be right here. And because that is a thing that sticks out, the nose, it's going to create another shadow back here. So that's why I'm such a huge advocate for rendering in black and white or in value, because you're going to end up rendering it um, with more confidence because you don't have color on the way. And you're going to end up with a really, really nice illustration out of it. And once you use the blend modes to add color, it's going to be so much easier. Just take a look at the prior critique that I had, which was Rosie's with her fox. She rendered it out in black and white so she could then start adding in the colors via blend mode. And like I trust me, it's going to be so much easier because you do most of the legwork in this stage, in the black and white stage. So, oh, by the way, the computer just not the computer, the recording software kind of gave up again. So hopefully there's not much of a interruption between this one and the other part, Stephanie. But like I said, start blocking everything in like this. So that your figure will just have a lot more form to it. Treat it like the basic shapes, like I said. And this will really, really bring your character to life. And just revert back to black and white because I can't stress that enough. I'm just a huge proponent of it. Until you get used to working with colors or just get really confident with it, definitely do it this way. It will teach you control of the brush, and it will also teach you how to just overall look at values. So once you really get comfortable with it and you start with color, you can kind of see through the colors and look at your values a lot more. And then let's say you get to this point where you render everything out, then we could use our clipping mask, create a brand new layer, Option Command G, and we could pick the colors from you that you already established, set it to multiply, excuse me, and pick some more colors, and set this one to multiply as well, or actually overlay. So multiply first for the base coat or the base wash, and then overlay for the more saturated colors, like so. And then you could build on top of it. Let's say you want to add a little bit more cool colors for the shadow, so soft light will be nice. And see how much richness there are in the color. You can even go in there and establish your block-ins too by first, like, let's say, blocking in your colors like the skin tone, set to multiply again. Again, multiply to begin with. It will give you a nice base coat. And then let's say the hair is going to be a blonde color. So let me put a golden color here. Want her to have blue eyes. So she's going to have blue eyes. So once I layer in the colors on top, let me use a soft brush for this one, set to overlay. So multiply, then overlay. Can use a blonde yellow color for the hair and skin tone for the skin and some blue for the blues of the eyes. Now, of course, take your time in this step. I'm just kind of running through it because, I don't want to spend too much time or make this too long for you guys to be watching. Too much overload sometimes could be a bad thing too. All right, so once you block in your color using multiply and overlay, I can then come back in there with the red, turn that on, see how much nicer that looks now. And then red on top and red on and purple on the other side. So it's a good idea to block in your colors first as well. And I could go in there, make a really bright color, set to overlay. And I could start adding in some more highlights. So it's all about just trying to figure out which works. The great thing about the layers is that you could turn it off or you could lessen the opacity if it's too strong. Like here, let me lower the opacity for this one so that more of the colors will come out. And here I have much richer color. And that's because I started out with a black and white image. So there you go. Hopefully this helps you out, Stephanie. I think you have a really, really good character here. We just need to start building upon your character, the character itself, and start rendering her out. Really like bringing her to life. And the best way to do that, I think I don't know if I keep saying easiest, but I think the fastest way to do that is through just a value illustration that you could add blend modes on top of. Like I said, unless you're really, really familiar with how colors are mixed and how colors interact with each other, it's going to be hard to gauge value and color with color on the way, and I still fall to it, I still need to go back into a black and white state first before I start adding in colors because that's just how I see things personally, myself. All right, hopefully I give you a lot to think about and a path to where you might take your illustration. All right, sorry, another technical difficulty kind of occurred here, but hopefully it runs smoother by the end of this. But just to tag on, please let me know if you need more help. I'd be more than happy to help you. And if you haven't heard from the other critiques yet, um, I'll give you I'll be giving everybody some extra time after the due date to complete their work, maybe over the spring break to kind of improve upon it and continue working on their illustrations. So take your time, even if we have a couple more days for this working week here. All right, that's pretty much it. Again, if you need more help outside of the allotted time, please tag me in class and let me know so that I could come by and help you out with what you need and give you some assistance. After all, it's all about the illustration, right? And getting you to create a really cool looking portfolio piece. All right, thank you very much, Stephanie, and I apologize. This critique in particular for your work is chopped up a lot, so I'm going to have to be putting everything together because of technical difficulties. So hopefully it wouldn't be too much of it wouldn't be too noticeable. All right, thank you so much, Stephanie. All right, so last but not least, just delete this here. Last but not least, we have Tara's illustration. So Tara, let me pick up your background here. Wow, that's gorgeous, Tara. Great job on your background. This looks beautiful. If you watch Severance, I don't know if any of you guys watched the show Severance, immediately this is the first thing I thought of, especially in the fourth episode this season with the little retreat that they had in like an icy kind of snowy tundra. But yeah, really, really good job there, Tara. Let me just pick up your character so that we have something to reference to here. Oh wow, this looks great. Oh, I love how your character turned out here. I like the fact that I guess it goes for other critiques that I've done. You started out with a beautiful value study that you were going to add colors to, that you are able to add colors to afterwards. I also like the fact that you built upon based on the critique. Look at the crown. The crown looks so cool, and also all the little areas here that just makes him like just pardon my or lack of a better word. He looks like a badass. Really cool looking beard with icicles. The icicles coming out of his back and shoulder here, almost like a shoulder pad with spikes popping out in the crown. Like I said, the crown looks really beautiful. I liked how he looked before, but that almost looked like him before he ascended to the crown, like what you see here. And just like I talked about in the demo I had previously with Stephanie's illustration, um, sometimes it's just good to do a value study first and then add the colors afterwards. Now, I think it would be yours would be a little bit easier than maybe like Stephanie's work because your character is mostly that bluish color, like an icicle kind of color. But the process is the same, you know, maybe some extra steps because Stephanie and other people are working with more colors, but the process is the same. Use multiply, overlay, soft light, and color dodge in different stacks to create a really cool looking um, illustration. Now, like I said, I really love your background. I think there's enough texture here that's not too overwhelming because the clouds are soft. You reserve the textures for the ice area here back with the mountains. And then you have a really nice soft texture here for the ground plane. Not too strong, not too much, just enough to, you know, add interest in there. I also like his placement. He looks like, I believe like, I talked about it, like Treebeard from Lord of the Rings. So he just looks really, really cool. Okay, so let's look at the overall illustration here. One thing that really pops out to me, though, is the fact that even with a really strong crown, it feels like he's kind of squished in there now, you know? What I would suggest is to open up your canvas just a little bit more, maybe this much, and then just continue the sky upwards so that so that you can avoid tangents like this. So avoid having tangents, open it up so that his head has a little bit of room to breathe. See how much this just opens it up immediately. And as much as if you could fit this whole illustration into the inside of the card panel, great. But if not, I think it would be better to gain here and then lose just the same amount down here. Just so that, again, it's important to let the top of his head breathe just a little bit. Another thing that I kind of know, sorry guys, my cat's snoring, so if you guys hear a little bit of snoring sound, that's my cat. Um, excuse me. One thing that I really like though, and the fact that he's standing. Oh wait, actually, before we go into him, this area is a little bit confusing. I feel like maybe this part right here is a step, right? It's in the foreground. So if it's in the foreground, awesome. Creates a lot of depth, but you have to cut that foot off right here. I mean, you lose the foot, but you know, it's kind of up to you. Or better yet, if you don't want to, and you want his whole being in there, just connect this part, this bridge, just bridge these two parts right here and just make that one whole thing like that. So that it looks like a little peninsula off to the side. So that will simplify it. And if you still want some kind of a foreground element, you could add it here like that, or even here. But yeah, definitely just bridge these two parts together so that it's just one plane. Now, what I really like about your illustration is the fact that it's very high contrast. The shadow is really good, gives him a really powerful kind of look. But however, it just doesn't match the lighting of the environment because in the environment it's bright. You know, you have a bright light. I mean, you know, overcast, sure, it looks like an overcast sky, but the light reflects down to the white snow and then goes back up. So what we need to do is, even though we want to keep the high contrast, we want to lighten it just a little bit so that it looks like light is reflecting onto him as well. So what I want to do is to create a brand new layer. This time use soft light and pick up your sky color. And with the soft light, just bring some light back in there like that. You still keep the contrast, the hard shadow like this, but let's just say it's an overcast day. The light is maybe coming from the front, and most of the light is coming from the bottom, because that's how your character is lit. Your character is lit from underneath him. So let the reflected light of the snow come out and hit him from underneath. But in the overcast day, maybe it's a little bit too dark, because the sky's darker than the actual snow that he is sitting on. So take that blue and just make some areas lighter. Maybe start from the bottom, make that part even lighter, like that. So soft light is a really good tool to lighten midtones. And then I can also just go in here. I think another way to create a bit, just to show his size and also the atmosphere, is to, after you're done like rendering him out, this is uh, you want to do your special effects, your fine detail, your last minute colors towards the end. You don't want to do it in the very middle. You don't want to add a texture in the middle of your working, your painting, because what if you add all those details halfway through, and by the time you get to the end, you're like, oh no, I gotta change something. That means you have to change so many things just so that you could, change something. You have to like go back a bunch of steps. So you want to reserve the surface stuff like textures and colors and special effects and reserve it for the end. But let's say you're towards the end here, and because I think you're pretty much almost there, Tara. But take your soft light, take the snow, and on a brand new layer, just add a bit of atmosphere coming from underneath, like the haze that come off of the snow, like the a combination of the particles of snow like coming out from underneath, and also the light bouncing off of the bottom part here. It's gonna create an atmosphere like this. So now it looks almost like a juggernaut. Like he's so big, the atmosphere around him is kind of um, affected. And then since this is going to be your main light source here, of course, you want those lights to bounce back up, meaning you're going to get reflected light coming in from underneath. Like that. Because the light's reflecting back up here. Oh, he looks so good. And then another thing that you could do is to create overlap. Maybe with like another texture brush, like the one you have been using, on a layer on top, have some of those snow come up, like he's sinking into the snow, and then you're gonna have texture come here and hide the bottom of his of him, like that, so that it looks more like he's actually connecting to that surface, and then he's sinking into it because he's so big, right? And then the last thing I want to add here, just so that we could round his form just a little bit more. Even though a lot of the light is coming from the bottom here, take a little bit of blue, like a brighter blue, and have the actual direct light from the sky come in and give him a little bit of rim light on certain areas to show that that's where the direction of the light is coming from. And it will also help separate him from that background even more. Maybe not with the texture brush I'm using here, but maybe like with a hard brush set to low opacity. Like that. See how it comes off of the page just a bit more, or come off with the background. And finally, this is something that maybe I tend to do. I tend to look at the illustration and go, it's very monochromatic. It's mostly blues and whites. I want to add something warm in there. So I'm going to use like maybe a warm light to come in, set to overlay with a soft brush, maybe at a low opacity, and just have some of that yellowy light come in to add a bit of warmth. Now, that's totally up to you. You don't have to do it. Me, I just like to kind of balance it out with a little bit of light. But let's say it's not working for you, that's okay. Then you could keep it like majority cool colors and blues and whites. And that's 100% okay. There you go. It looks really good, Tara. I think you're pretty much almost there. Just need to start adding in the special effects and textures and stuff. All right, that's pretty much it for everybody. Tara, I can't wait to see the final of your illustration. Again, everybody, hopefully you watched the whole thing. If not, I mentioned it a couple of times. The due date will remain the same, but I will give you guys extra time to keep working on it, um, which will give you a lot more time. So you can get, the goal here is a portfolio piece. And I'll give you some time after you turn it in, because I think after Tuesday or on Wednesday, it's spring break, right? So for spring break, you guys have the option to keep working on it, and not, or either that, maybe you just want to go, okay, I'm happy with it. I'll just turn it in, keep it turned in, and yeah, and then just um be happy with the grade that you're in, get on based on what you turned in on Tuesday, and that's 100% okay. Not everybody wants to work during the spring break, you know. Maybe you need a breather and just not think about school or work or anything at all. But yeah, I'll post a notification on that. And finally, yeah, I'm so sorry, guys. The last couple of critiques are going to be broken up and maybe spliced together because the computer is the technology and me just don't go well together sometimes. Um, which is weird because I'm a digital artist. But yeah, hopefully I could piece it together where it's not so noticeable. But yeah. Anyway, here's the critiques. Thank you very much for your work, everybody. Everything looks really, really good. I cannot wait to see you guys as finals. All right, till next time.